This video is sponsored by you. Links for the channel are in the description. Hello there, Arknights most hated YouTuber here, once again being quite confused at all those other videos from other YouTubers outside the Arknights space, being like, oh, you guys know me, I like being positive, I don't like making negative videos, it's not the vibe I want on my channel. Fuck you! I love being a hater, it gives me youth. So today we are discussing the worst 6-star operator in each class. Yes, the title and the thumbnail are technically misleading. This is because if I actually included every operator in the game, this entire list would just be 2 stars, 1 stars, and Frostleaf. We begin with casters. Some operators in this video are here through a process of elimination, where they just happen to be the least good of their class. Others on this list, however, literally do not function as operators in this game on a basic level, and are fundamentally broken. Carnelian is the latter. She's not just the worst 6-star caster, she is the worst 6-star in general. Operators like her and Liberator guards function on a very simple concept. They do nothing for a while to then pop off with a big payoff. Not just that, but they don't truly do nothing while they charge. Angelina has global healing, Lin nullifies damage below a certain threshold, Beeswax is an insane tank, and Muinar attracts aggro and reflects damage. So, operators like this to function are composed of 2 parts, the big payout and utility as they charge. Carnelian is lacking both. I cannot stress this enough, that during her outrageously long charge times, she truly, absolutely does not do anything. She is quite possibly the only operator in the game, beside Windscoot, that does not do anything. Nothing, nada. Everyone else, even Mint, do something while charging. Carnelian uniquely does not. But then you activate her, and she does so little she might as well still be doing nothing. Her DPS and total damage are comparable to Tequila, the 5-star Liberator, and even then it's back-ended, meaning it needs to ramp up, making it just a tad more unreliable. When it comes to tanking, she's also abysmal dogshit, so you can't even cope that she can at least be a baseline tank. She regains HP when skills are activated, but due to the Phalanx caster trait, it means she will immediately lose all the HP she just gained. Carnelian truly and absolutely does not function as an operator in its most baseline requirements. As for guards, it was actually really close. Chen, the one without the ridiculous name, is immediately out of the competition due to the Archeto IS module, rendering offensive recovery a genuine niche in IS. Lessing also can dish out some pretty okay damage, and on paper he has a niche against abnormal statuses. This means it was between Hellagur and Pallas. I talked about it in my Discord server, which you should join by the way, link in the description, and I went in-game to run some tests of my own. In the end, I feel it's a pretty clear-cut answer. Hellagur is a geriatric weak old man, and believe you me, he surely feels like it in gameplay. I put them both against Bishop Quintus, which is kind of just a huge HP sponge, and Hellagur took around twice the time it took Pallas to kill it, while being deployed last and having no healing, meaning he could make use of his talent. Plus, skill 2 has a pretty bad uptime at just 34%, and relies on RNG to dodge as his only self-sustain. Plus, he can't use medics. This is important. It means he doesn't have access to a lot of utility, mainly Monster skill 2 and Lumen skill 3. Hellagur doesn't really have any survivability to speak of, unlike Zuole. This means that for him to shine, you need the extremely specific circumstance of enemies that can beat his ass to trigger his talent, but not quite hard enough to actually kill him. He shines in one very specific situation, and you kinda need to go out of your way to make it happen, while otherwise being extremely underwhelming. For the medic class, the choice is really obvious, it's Shining. In fact, out of every 6-star medic, she's the only one I would call bad. Every single other one is actually really good. The one big issue with Shining is her gimmick. She's the physical damage counterpart to Nightingale. They are meant to mitigate huge amounts of their respective damage types. However, whereas Art's damage is a percentage reduction, meaning that Nightingale increasing resistance by 15 is a 15% damage reduction in all circumstances, physical is a simple subtraction. Enemy attack minus operator defense gives you the final damage. This means that, in the situations Shining is meant to be used, those being huge amounts of physical damage, it is likely that physical damage will be enough to outpace Shining's healing. In other words, for the vast majority of circumstances, it's just better to use a raw HPS healer like Susurro or Eia Alter. Shining is left in this weird middle ground, where the physical damage needs to be high enough, where an HPS healer can't help, but also not quite high enough to just ignore her skill tree. It's the same problem as Hellagur. Besides, Haruka's skill tree is in the game now, which is literally just Nightingale skill tree, but that also applies to physical damage, completely and utterly removing any tiny little resemblance of a niche Shining might have had. Snipers are also an easy choice. Sure, there's some stinkers in here, like Rosmontis anywhere outside of IS-5, Schwarz, which got power crept into super hell, or the original W, which kinda doesn't do anything. But only one 6-star sniper has the luxury of joining the exclusive club of operators who do not function on a fundamental level, and that's Fartooth. Here's the thing. Anyway, regarding Fartooth, the issue is that infinite expand dong straight line range on skill tree is a cool concept on paper, but in practice, due to how she actually works, she needs to make use of that extra range to get access to her damage, which means you need a stage that is very wide or very long, with a ranged tile in a useful position to hit important enemies. In other words, a solid 90% of stages in this game literally do not have a functioning tile for Fartooth skill tree. She also has skill 2, but it's really lackluster. It has poor skill cycles, relies on other operators, and doesn't actually increase her damage, just her attack speed. Besides, her infinite range gimmick in a straight line sounds cool at first, until you realize that global range is literally just that, but in every line. So even in the 1 in 10 stages where her skill tree is allowed to function, she gets mogged by Goldenglow and Lappland Alter. Another issue with Fartooth is that her gimmick is damage per hit rather than damage per second. This means she doesn't synergize super well with attack speed buffs, and not just that, the damage per hit isn't all that great. Very often, it can't one-shot very basic mobs. In the end, you are left with an extremely underwhelming sniper whose skill tree does not even have a functioning tile on most maps in the game. Specialists were a tough one. A lot of you, the ignorant swines, may immediately point to Crown Slayer, and sure, maybe once upon a time, but not anymore. Her new module actually makes her pretty good. The other specialists are actually either alright, or good, or downright meta. All of them have a niche. Some of them are underwhelming, like Schwarz and Leah, but none are bad per se. Ultimately, it was between Ak and Phantom, and I chose Ak. His issue is much the same as Phantom, that being that due to new releases, he just has no place in the meta anymore. Anything he does, someone else does better. The difference between him and Phantom, however, is that you could, if you wanted, use Phantom alongside Texas and Yato. As for Ak, you never really use multiple buffers, do you? Even in CC, you usually only use one buffer, if any, or one buffer paired with one debuffer. There is two camps of buffing, attack and attack speed. Attack can fall flat on certain units due to some additive multiplicative things that my small brain doesn't fully comprehend, but you can just plainly see it with your eyes that it doesn't do much on operators like Sutra and synergizes very well with others like Ray. Attack speed is more beneficial on a wider range of units. So, unfortunately for Ak, Warfarin is way better when it comes to attack buffs, and Trans Representation Monstre exists now, which is the queen of attack speed buffs, and in general the best stat buff in the game. This leaves Ak with no place left in the ecosystem of the game. He's not the best buffer for anyone, really, anymore. Besides, due to the upfront damage tax they have to pay, he cannot buff everyone, while the other two simply do not have any such restriction. Magallan is the worst supporter and there is no competition. I don't want to hear it. Because you watched a Magallan solo 4 years ago, that doesn't mean she's good. There is a reason those videos are so old. She has more issues than a Hello Kitty girl, and this is probably the longest section in the video. Let me state this once more. The main issue with the summoner archetype is very simple. The summons take up deployment slots. This means that said summons are in direct competition with literally every single other operator that could take that deployment slot instead. Unless you are using Ling or Raidian, the summon will never win that competition. Some modules make it so the first summon does not take deployment slots to mitigate this, but a singular free summon in a team of regular operators has about as much impact on the team as an empty squad slot. So, because of this, in the year of our Lord 2025, there is two reasons to use a summoner: to trust farm and to make a cool clear video. For the videos, nobody watches those, be for real. For trust farms, Ling, Raidian and Eblana are so much better. Not just that, but Magallan is also a victim of early operator design. She has pointless restrictions that do nothing but gimp her. Namely, the fact that her summons vanish off to the fucking Shadow Realm when the skills end. But okay, let's say you are a funky fellow and you do use summoners in normal gameplay. You will find out three things. 1. Her skill 1 is actually pretty okay, the stall is actually alright. However, like 99% of crowd control operators in this game, she runs into the same wall, which is the simple question: why the fuck wouldn't you use Ethan instead? A free 4-star that does the same thing, but way better. 2. Magallan's drones barely deal damage. 3. If you feel like using a summoner, Raidian, a free 6-star that will come with IS-6, exists and is around 10 times better. The issue with summoners is that you need to justify bringing a summoner, and then you need to justify deploying a summon instead of a normal operator. In normal gameplay, there is simply no way to ever justify using Magallan. For everything her drones can do, an actual operator does better. And for trust farms, there is better dedicated trust farm operators. And if you just feel like using a summoner for some reason, Raidian exists, who is freer, more comfortable and stronger. Magallan discussion is uniquely frustrating. In the early days, she gained a reputation as a very strong operator who could solo stages on her own, but had a steep learning curve. You had to prove yourself to enter the Temple of the Penguin. This made her the premium, elitist, pinky-out choice, and in fact, even today, when you point out the obvious, gigantic, glaring flaws with Magallan, and that she is completely worthless for 99% of players, you're gonna get hit with the skill issue. Clearly, you are not an enlightened Arknights player who enjoys the game beyond the gacha aspects like me. Rather, you are a brute who uses the meta 6 stars without realizing they are products to be sold. Ho ho ho! Clearly, you haven't hit up the Magallan dojo to train, you absolute barbarian. Moving on, before I get an actual aneurysm, there is only one real candidate for the worst 6-star defender. The thing with defenders is that, by and large, they are all alright. Baseline, if you pick a defender, you want them to take a bunch of hits and block 3, and almost every single defender achieves this function, so almost all of them are alright units or better. Almost, because Eunectes exists. Duelist defenders are the single worst archetype in the game. In function, they are just an overly expensive and shitty dreadnought guard, who itself is a quite mediocre and underused archetype. Not just that, but duelists have an horrendously bad trait of only being able to gain SP when blocking. As I said in previous videos, Arknights is a skill game. You do not use operators for their basic attacks, you bring them for the skills. Therefore, things that give you easier access to skills are some of the best things in the game. In the same token, actively hampering your own ability to access your own skills is the single most disastrous thing you can do to yourself in this game. To balance this, duelists have a very high attack stat. However, this actually ended up harming them even more, because by having a high attack stat, they will kill whatever they are blocking sooner, and thus get less SP from it. And yes, even Hypergriff realized this is an issue, as Aurora, the duelist defender after Eunectes, literally does not attack until she gets a certain amount of SP. And about this, it doesn't really matter to the video, but I want to mention it. Eunectes is, as far as I know, the only operator in the game with an outright negative module. That being her module Y, which does nothing but increase her attack even further, so she has even more trouble getting SP. I understand that this is a module meant for skill 1, but still. Eunectes is clunky, shitty, awkward, finicky, and once you get through everything and charge her skill, it's not even all that good compared to newer operators in year 6 and 7 who have better, more powerful skills without the nut-grating hassle Eunectes offers. So you have a shitty dreadnought with the worst trait in the game, with clunky skills to use, which once used are not even comparable to everything else around them. Finally, for our final class, we have Vanguards. It's a siege. Vigil is actually kind of alright nowadays. Skill 3 has solid damage and synergizes very well with buffs, and his skill 1 is used pretty often for stalling. Meanwhile, Siege generally has nothing. The Throne of Victoria is like the most gigantic cope I've ever seen. Her one niche, that of being an early game lane holder, as in handling enemies at the start of the stage for a cheap cost, was completely erased and lost to the sands of time when Myrtle came out 6 fucking years ago. And then she just kept getting power crept over and over, to the point I can only assume someone at Hypergriff actually just hates her. She's a weak operator who barely makes any DP, the only Vanguard in the game with a skill that does not make DP and does not help making DP in any way. She has no real use case or niche to speak of. She does nothing, she is nothing, she has no place in the ecosystem of the game, and her artworks are kinda ugly. That's all, Max Archer Gummy, bye. Hey, what's up? Welcome to the outro. I woke up like 5 minutes ago and I'm recording this. Anyway, thank you for watching the video, and a special thank you to Artjack, Kami, I Love Wishadel, Bomb Ninja, Mirak, Raditz, Good of Leon, Living Shad, Apollo T, QX10, Mr. Lair, That Animal Raptor, Seishin, Joseph D, Zephyrinix, Noobpo, Lizard King, Nemotic, Nerdrage, Andre Mulla, Chris Ho, Camon Hiren, Maxiosess, Kevin Melquire, Larmendra, Shimali, Unyunuk, Yevune Sia, The King of Harems, Jigster, That Guy with Two Names, Lightnero, Chromochanova JJF, and Bozidar. What the fuck? Anyway, thank you for watching.